It started like any other mission. The deep space exploration fleet had been traveling quietly for weeks, mapping empty systems and silent planets that never saw life. The crew had grown used to the calm routine, the soft hum of engines, the glow of control panels, the long silence between stars. No one expected anything unusual. They were simply collecting data, scanning, and sending reports back to Earth. Then one morning, something strange appeared on the long-range sensors. It wasn't a normal blip or a random radiation signal. It was something organized, something huge. The scanners showed artificial energy signatures, hundreds of times stronger than anything human ships had ever seen before. It wasn't a planet and it wasn't an asteroid field. It was moving. The crew leaned forward, confused and excited. They had found something made by intelligent life. At first they thought it was an ancient ruin or a derelict station drifting through space. But then the readings grew stronger, sharper, more active. There were ships there, hundreds of them. A wave of excitement ran through the crew. For decades, humanity had looked to the stars, wondering if they were alone. Scientists argued, governments searched, and satellites listened for any sign of life. Now at last they had found it. The humans had made first contact, but not in the way they imagined. They weren't being visited. They were the visitors. The fleet's commander ordered a slow approach. The ships adjusted their courses carefully, staying cautious but curious. As they got closer, they began to see the outlines of a massive structure floating in the distance, something like a fortress or a capital ship. It was enormous, glowing with thousands of lights and strange energy fields. It looked powerful, majestic, and oddly old-fashioned. Still, it was beautiful in its own way, a creation not from human hands. Every screen in the command room was filled with details about the alien ships. The crew whispered among themselves. Some were nervous. Others couldn't stop staring in awe. History was being made right in front of them. Then the first signal came through. A deep formal voice spoke in a language no one recognized. The translation system took a few moments to decode it, but soon the words appeared clearly on the screen. The message was grand and commanding, almost like a royal announcement. Attention, unknown vessels. You have entered the sovereign space of the Galactic Empire. Identify yourselves immediately and submit for inspection. You are now subjects of the Emperor's will. The bridge went silent. Everyone just looked at each other. For a second, no one spoke. Then a quiet laugh escaped from one of the technicians. It wasn't disrespect, it was disbelief. They had just made contact with an interstellar empire, and the first thing it did was demand that humanity surrender. The commander stayed calm. He ordered a polite reply, introducing the human fleet as explorers from Earth. The message was respectful, peaceful, and simple. They explained that humanity came in friendship and curiosity, not to invade or challenge anyone. They even sent coordinates showing they were far from home and just passing through. But the reply that came back was even more ridiculous. Explorers, your primitive craft trespass within the heart of Imperial Dominion. You will kneel before the Emperor's light or face annihilation. The technician who had laughed before now couldn't stop himself. A few others joined him, covering their mouths to stay quiet. Even the commander couldn't help but smile slightly. The situation was surreal. They were being threatened by a civilization that clearly thought very highly of itself. Still, the commander tried to keep things diplomatic. He sent another message, this time asking to meet peacefully or at least exchange basic information. The alien fleet responded again, but not with words this time. Their ships began moving, slowly but confidently, forming a formation around the human vessels. It was a show of power. Their ships were massive, stretching kilometers long, decorated with golden armor and glowing banners that shimmered like fire in the dark. They looked intimidating, but something about them felt outdated. As the humans analyzed the scans, the first bits of data came through. The results were confusing. The Empire's ships looked impressive, but the readings didn't match their appearance. Their shields were weak. Their energy output was unstable. Their engines were slower than Earth's latest drives. Even their weapons looked primitive. Huge cannons with poor aim and energy efficiency that hadn't been seen since the early days of space warfare. The science officer frowned, double-checking the data. Everything was correct. These so-called Imperial warships might look grand, but they were, in truth, inefficient machines from another age. When this was quietly announced across the bridge, a wave of quiet laughter spread through the crew again. It wasn't cruel, just a reaction to the absurdity. Here was a civilization calling itself the greatest empire in the galaxy, yet their technology seemed worse than humanity's experimental prototypes. The Empire's commander must have noticed the laughter. He appeared on the main screen, a tall, proud figure dressed in layers of shining metal and strange fabric. His voice carried the tone of someone used to obedience. "You dare to mock the Empire," he said through the translator. "You will soon learn your place. Our fleets span 1,000 worlds. Your laughter will turn to fear." The commander of the human ship tried to hide his smile and responded with calm respect. "We do not mean any insult. We only seek peaceful contact and understanding between our peoples." But the alien leader ignored it, continuing his speech about power, destiny, and control. He talked as if humanity were a minor insect that had accidentally flown into a royal court. He listed titles and victories, names of battles that meant nothing to the humans, and achievements that sounded exaggerated. Some of the crew exchanged glances. One whispered under his breath, "Is this guy serious?" Another muttered, "Does he even realize how weak his shields are?" The laughter returned, this time softer, controlled, but impossible to stop. Even through the tension of the moment, it was clear that the humans found the situation ridiculous. The Empire's fleet continued circling them, as if to intimidate. The humans didn't move. Their weapons stayed offline. There was no point in fighting. They weren't here for war, yet deep down everyone knew the truth now. This so-called empire was not what it appeared to be. The humans had seen arrogance before. On Earth, they'd learned through history what pride and power could do. They'd seen empires rise and fall, each believing itself untouchable until reality came crashing in. And now, here it was again, replayed among the stars. The commander leaned back in his chair looking at the glowing screens. He didn't feel fear anymore, just curiosity and maybe a little pity. What kind of civilization could conquer so many worlds yet never realize how fragile it had become? Still, humanity was careful. They knew one wrong move could spark a conflict. They sent another calm message, thanking the Empire for its warm welcome and requesting permission to leave peacefully. The translator softened the words, trying to sound respectful, but the Empire didn't understand the tone. They thought the humans were still trying to negotiate from weakness. They promised to escort the Earth ships to a nearby station for processing, where they would learn the ways of the Empire. The humans exchanged looks. The absurdity was now beyond belief. Processing? As if they were some lost tribe being rescued by a colonial power. Someone on the bridge laughed out loud again, unable to stop. The commander didn't scold them this time. He just sighed. "Let's see where this goes," he said quietly. As the human fleet followed the alien escort, sensors continued collecting data. Every reading confirmed the same thing. The Empire was huge, yes, but built on old foundations. Their ships looked like cathedrals, but they fought like museum pieces. Humanity's smaller, sleeker ships could probably outmaneuver them easily if it ever came to that. But for now, the humans just observed. They watched, recorded, and tried to understand. This was a moment that would change history forever. Humanity had stepped into a galaxy already full of civilizations, but perhaps those civilizations weren't as advanced as everyone once imagined. The laughter wasn't mockery. It was the human reaction to the absurdity of the universe. They had expected godlike beings among the stars. Instead, they found proud, pompous rulers who didn't even realize how outdated they were. As the alien ships guided them deeper into imperial space, the commander couldn't help but think, maybe this meeting wasn't a threat. Maybe it was an opportunity to learn, to adapt, and to remind the galaxy that humans were not the ones to underestimate. Outside the window, the alien fleet glimmered like jewels across the void. Grand, colorful, and loud, but inside the human ship, quiet laughter and calm confidence filled the air. They had no idea what awaited them next, but one thing was certain. Humanity's first meeting with the Galactic Empire was going to be unforgettable. And for reasons the Empire would soon understand, the humans just couldn't stop laughing. The human ships followed the Imperial escort through deep space, their engines humming softly in the darkness. The alien vessels ahead glowed like floating palaces, huge and slow, each one covered in bright colors and shimmering banners that looked almost ceremonial. The humans couldn't decide if they were watching a military convoy or a parade. The Empire clearly loved to show off. Inside the lead human ship, The crew watched silently. Every few minutes, someone would quietly laugh at something on their screens. The Empire's ships were broadcasting so much unnecessary data that the humans could see almost everything. Navigation systems, outdated engine cycles, even radio chatter between Imperial officers. It was like watching an old science fiction movie from centuries ago. The aliens were organized, yes, but their technology felt ancient compared to the systems humans had built in the last 50 years. Still, everyone remained cautious. They didn't want to make a mistake. The Empire might look outdated, but no one knew how large it truly was or what kind of weapons it could bring if provoked. Humanity had learned through history that arrogance was dangerous, whether it came from others or from themselves. The escort finally slowed near a giant structure floating among the stars. It looked like a station, but it was built more like a monument. Huge spires reached out in every direction, covered in lights that flickered like candles. The Empire called it the Imperial Gateway, the heart of their border space. The humans stared at it in awe. It was both beautiful and impractical, massive, artistic, but filled with wasted space. A message came through, strong and proud. The same voice as before, deep and commanding. The Empire's representative introduced himself as the supreme envoy of the Emperor. He spoke as if reciting a practiced speech, every word heavy with pride. Visitors from the unknown world called Earth, he said. You now stand before the might of the Galactic Empire. You are to be received, questioned, and taught the ways of civilization. Your obedience will be rewarded. Your defiance will be crushed. On the bridge, the humans stayed silent for a moment. Then someone whispered, Did he just say taught the ways of civilization? Another answered, Guess we're the new students. A quiet laugh passed around the room. The commander kept a calm face but couldn't help smiling slightly. Send a reply, he said. Thank them for their hospitality. Say we're honored to be their guests. The message was sent politely, but it only seemed to make the aliens more confident. Within minutes, the Imperial envoy sent another grand statement, this time about the Empire's history. He spoke of their 1,000 conquered worlds, their endless victories, their divine leader, who ruled with wisdom and mercy. He described how the Empire had lifted countless lesser species from savagery into enlightenment. The humans listened carefully, but the tone of his speech was so self-centered that it became almost funny. Every sentence sounded like something out of an old fairy tale. When the envoy finally paused, a few crew members were struggling not to laugh. It wasn't that they were mocking him, they just couldn't believe it. After traveling through the void for years, crossing countless empty systems, they had finally met another intelligent species, only to find one that acted like a medieval kingdom floating in space. The human science officer quietly ran more scans. The readings confirmed what they already suspected. The station's energy output was weak. Its communication systems used frequencies humans had abandoned decades ago. Even their translation software seemed primitive, probably why the aliens misunderstood human laughter as a sign of submission earlier. While the crew studied, the Empire continued to broadcast its pride. One large hologram flickered to life on the bridge screen, showing what looked like a grand hall filled with alien nobles. They wore long metallic robes, and behind them were tall statues of their emperor, arms raised, eyes glowing with artificial light. The voice of the envoy echoed again. You see now the greatness of the Empire. You are fortunate to stand before it. Your world will be honored to join under our banners. That was the moment when one of the engineers, who had been silent all day, couldn't take it anymore. He laughed. It wasn't loud or rude, just a natural surprise laugh that slipped out. But on the Empire's side, the reaction was instant. The alien envoy paused mid-sentence, clearly offended. The human commander quickly stepped in, sending a calm apology. We appreciate your introduction, he said smoothly. Our people sometimes express amazement differently. It is a sign of respect and joy. That seemed to calm the situation for now. The Empire's envoy nodded, misunderstanding completely. Indeed, he said proudly. It is natural for lesser species to feel joy when meeting the light of the Empire. The humans could barely keep straight faces. The escort ships guided them closer to the station. From up close, it was even stranger. The entire outer structure looked decorative rather than functional. Enormous pillars that served no real purpose, hundreds of lights arranged in patterns instead of signals, and unnecessary thruster ports that wasted energy. It looked more like a floating palace than a spaceport. Inside the human ships, the scientists took notes and kept scanning. Every new reading made the same thing clear. The Empire had built everything for appearance, not for efficiency. Power was their image, not their reality. When the docking clamps finally locked onto the human vessel, the crew prepared for the next step. They were told to wait for boarding officials. The Empire insisted that inspection was mandatory for all visitors. The commander agreed, mostly out of curiosity. Soon, a group of Imperial officers entered through the airlock. Their suits were shiny and over-decorated, covered in medals and symbols. But their breathing masks looked old and clumsy, and their scanners seemed less advanced than human handheld devices. The officers walked proudly through the human corridors, speaking in firm, practiced voices. They examined everything as if judging the worth of a rare animal. One officer tapped on a control panel and nodded to another. "Primitive design," he said through the translator. "Functional but lacking grace." The humans stayed polite, watching quietly. The officers had no idea that the ship's systems were far beyond anything they had seen before. They simply didn't recognize the designs. The humans let them believe whatever they wanted. There was no point in arguing. After the inspection, the Imperial officers left a message. The humans were invited, though it sounded more like an order, to meet the envoy in person at the central hall. The commander accepted. The meeting hall inside the station was massive, glowing with gold light. The walls were lined with banners, each showing strange alien symbols. The envoy stood at the far end on a raised platform, surrounded by guards who wore armor that looked heavy enough to slow them down. The humans walked forward calmly. The envoy spread his arms and spoke with confidence. "Welcome, people of Earth. You stand before the greatness of the Empire. You will serve and you will learn. In time, your kind will thank us for bringing you from darkness into light." The translator repeated his words in clear English. The humans stood silently, trying to stay serious. The commander gave a polite nod. "We thank you for receiving us," he said. "We come in peace. We only wish to share knowledge." The envoy smiled, clearly interpreting the response as submission. "Peace will come once you accept our rule. The Empire's strength protects all. You are fortunate we found you before another power did." That was too much for one of the human officers. He turned slightly to hide his grin, pretending to cough. The others stood firm, but the corners of their mouths twitched. It was getting impossible to stay serious. The envoy, proud and unaware, continued his grand speech. He spoke about the Emperor's endless victories and the punishment of rebels. He talked about the low species who had been uplifted and now served in the Imperial armies. To him, humanity was just the next in line. But as he talked, the humans noticed something else. The guards standing behind him didn't seem proud. Their faces were expressionless, their eyes dull. They looked tired. It was as if even they no longer believed the words they heard every day. The meeting ended with formal bows. The envoy promised to send instructions for humanity's integration. The humans left quietly, escorted back to their ships. Once inside, the door closed and the room filled with silence. Then all at once the crew burst into laughter. It echoed through the hallways, breaking the tension completely. They weren't laughing out of arrogance. They were laughing because it was so absurd, this empire, with all its pride and old-fashioned traditions, thinking it had found new subjects, while humanity stood there with technology centuries ahead of them. Even the commander laughed, shaking his head. "If this is the most powerful empire in the galaxy," he said, "then the galaxy is in for a surprise." Everyone agreed. The humans weren't sure what would happen next. Maybe the Empire would keep pretending to be superior. Maybe they'd learn the truth soon enough. But one thing was certain. The humans would remember this meeting forever, not as a moment of fear or submission, but as the day they realized that the universe wasn't filled with gods or monsters. It was filled with people, some proud, some foolish, some just pretending to be powerful. And that realization made them laugh, not out of mockery, but out of pure human disbelief. They had come all this way, searching for the most advanced beings in existence. Instead, they found The human ships left the giant Imperial station slowly, still surrounded by the alien escort. The crew tried to stay calm and professional, but the mood inside every ship was light. It was hard to take the Empire seriously after what they had just seen. The long speeches, the outdated technology, the endless pride, It was like meeting someone who still thought the world revolved around them. The commander sat in silence, looking at the glowing ships ahead. The escort was leading them toward another part of Imperial space for what they called orientation. The humans already knew what that meant, another round of speeches and orders. But instead of feeling intimidated, they were curious. They wanted to understand these aliens better. For hours, the convoy moved through dark space. The humans used the time to quietly gather more data. Their scanners kept reading every energy pulse, every signal, every ship's pattern. The more they saw, the stranger it all looked. The Empire's ships were big but not efficient. They wasted energy on decorative shields that glowed brightly, but provided little real protection. Their engines used outdated fuel patterns that burned too hot, losing half their thrust. Even their communication systems were filled with static. One of the engineers leaned back and said softly, "They must think this is impressive." Another replied, "They've probably never met anyone who told them otherwise." Everyone chuckled quietly. Then a new message came through. The Imperial commander's voice filled the bridge, deep, proud, and full of confidence. "Attention, human fleet," he said. "By decree of the Emperor, your vessels will now undergo power inspection to confirm compliance with safety standards. Shut down your reactors and await approval." The human crew looked at each other. They could barely keep straight faces. The Empire wanted to inspect their ships for safety, as if humans were the ones using unstable technology. The commander gave a small nod and they sent a polite reply. "We thank you for your concern," the message said. "But our reactors are self-contained and cannot be powered down without damage to critical systems." The Empire's voice came back sharply. "You will obey Imperial regulation. Resistance is not acceptable." There was a pause. The human crew waited, unsure whether to laugh or to feel sorry for the aliens. The commander thought for a moment, then sent another reply. "Understood. We will comply as soon as we ensure our systems can do so safely." The Imperial voice softened slightly, pleased to hear obedience. "See that you do," he said before the transmission ended. As soon as the channel closed, laughter broke out across the bridge. "They're inspecting our safety?" someone said. Another replied their shields couldn't block a flashlight. The laughter was contagious. The humans didn't mean to insult them, but the situation was too absurd. Every minute made the Empire seem more like a stage play than a real power. Yet there was something unsettling underneath the humor. These aliens truly believed they were in control. They didn't even question their own weaknesses. Later that day, the convoy arrived near another massive structure, a fleet base orbiting a dying star. It was surrounded by hundreds of ships, each one flashing lights like a beacon of importance. The Empire must have considered this an impressive display of strength. The humans saw it differently. They noticed ships that looked like they hadn't moved in years. Many had damaged hulls patched with crude metal. Others drifted slowly, using weak thrusters to stay in formation. The whole base looked more like a floating museum than a military outpost. The Imperial Fleet Commander appeared again on screen. His expression was proud and serious. "Behold the arm of the Empire," he said. "Our fleets have ruled this sector for centuries. No one dares to challenge us." On the human bridge, silence lasted about 3 seconds before someone whispered, "No one dares to challenge them because everyone's too busy laughing." The whole crew tried not to react, but a few couldn't help it. Even the commander smiled. Then, as if to prove their power, the Empire fired a demonstration shot. A massive cannon from one of their cruisers charged up with a loud echoing hum. Energy built up around it, glowing like a small sun. The humans watched quietly. When it finally fired, a beam of light shot into space and hit a nearby asteroid. It exploded with a big flash, but when the smoke cleared, most of the asteroid was still there. The humans stared at their screens, speechless for a moment. The Empire had just shown off its greatest weapon and it barely made a dent in a rock. The engineer shook his head slowly. "That's it?" he muttered. "That's their super weapon?" The commander rubbed his forehead, half amused, half amazed. "Record everything," he said softly. "Every reading, every number." The Empire's voice came through again, filled with pride. "You see now the power of the Empire. Those who defy us are erased from existence. It was too much." The crew tried to stay professional, but soft laughter spread through the ship. Some covered their mouths, others turned away. The commander had to bite his tongue to keep from smiling. He finally replied with a calm, polite tone. "Impressive demonstration," he said. "Your technology is remarkable. The alien commander sounded satisfied. Yes, he said. And soon your people will learn from us and improve. Once the channel closed, the humans could no longer hold back. The bridge filled with laughter, light and uncontrollable. It wasn't mockery, it was disbelief. They couldn't believe this empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries, with technology weaker than Earth's first generation of interstellar ships. As the laughter faded, a quiet voice from the science station spoke. Maybe they don't know how far behind they are, she said softly. If no one's ever challenged them, maybe they think they're unbeatable. The mood shifted slightly. The commander nodded. Arrogance can survive a long time when no one questions it. For the first time, the crew began to feel something more than amusement. They felt curiosity and a little sadness. The Empire wasn't evil, not really. It was just trapped in its own illusion. They had built their identity around being the strongest, and now they couldn't imagine a world where they weren't. Still, the humans couldn't help but find the situation funny. Every hour, the Empire sent more messages filled with dramatic speeches about destiny and greatness. The humans responded politely every time, careful not to reveal what they truly thought. Eventually, the Empire's fleet invited them to a joint military exercise, a show meant to impress the humans with imperial might. The humans agreed, mostly to see what would happen. When the exercise began, the Empire's ships moved into formation slowly, almost clumsily. Their timing was off, their coordination poor. They fired mock weapons at empty targets, missing half of them. On the human ships, the crew watched the spectacle in disbelief. They were expecting something terrifying. Instead, it looked like a group of children playing at war. The humans decided to run their own small demonstration, just to show cooperation. They fired a single railgun test shot, low power, carefully aimed. The projectile moved so fast that it disappeared in a blink and split a target asteroid clean in half. The Empire's sensors went wild. Their officers started talking quickly through their channels, clearly shocked. One of them even asked if it was a trick. The humans didn't explain. They simply said it was standard equipment. After that, the Empire's tone changed slightly. The messages became less commanding, a little more cautious. The humans noticed it immediately. For the first time, the Empire seemed unsure of itself. That evening, as the humans rested and reviewed their recordings, they talked quietly among themselves. One officer said, "They've lived in this bubble for centuries. No wonder they act like that." Another replied, "Yeah, when no one challenges you, you start thinking you're a god." The commander looked out the viewport, where the Imperial fleet floated like glowing toys in the distance. "Maybe this is good," he said. "Maybe we can show them what real progress looks like without firing a single shot." Everyone nodded. The laughter from before had softened now, turning into something more reflective. The crew understood that this meeting wasn't just about humor anymore. It was about perspective. Humanity had always feared meeting superior beings among the stars. But now that they had, the truth was the opposite. The galaxy wasn't ruled by gods. It was ruled by people, flawed, proud, and just as confused as humans once were. As the night cycle began on the ship, the commander sat alone in the control room, recording his daily log. "Today," he said quietly, "we learned something important. Power doesn't always mean progress. And sometimes the ones who laugh aren't mocking. They're simply realizing how far they've come." He looked again at the Empire's ships on the horizon, glowing like old stars trying to shine bright again. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we'll see what happens when pride meets reality." The hum of the engines filled the air. The stars outside drifted slowly past the windows. Somewhere out there, the great Galactic Empire believed it was still the strongest force in the universe. But deep inside, a small fleet of human ships knew better. They weren't afraid anymore. They were ready for whatever came next. And though the laughter had faded into quiet smiles, the spirit behind it remained. The simple, unstoppable curiosity of humankind, the kind that always reached for more, always questioned, always learned. The humans had come looking for something greater than themselves. What they found instead was a reminder of who they truly were. And that truth, more than any, out in the quiet darkness of deep space, the human ships floated calmly, their engines barely humming. Inside the main control room, the crew could hardly stop laughing. It had been hours since the so-called Galactic Empire made contact, and every new message from them only made things funnier. The alien voice, full of pride and drama, kept demanding that the humans bow before the Empire's glory. To the humans, it sounded like something straight out of an old science fiction movie. The translator kept repeating the same royal phrases over and over, as if the aliens were reading from a script written by someone who truly believed they ruled the universe. The human crew had to mute the channel twice just to breathe between their fits of laughter. One of the engineers almost spilled his coffee while reading the alien ship's power data. Their systems were ancient, slow, and unstable. They had massive ships but weak reactors. The humans' smallest scout craft had better energy efficiency than the Empire's entire fleet. Still, the humans tried to keep things polite. The commander sent a calm reply, thanking the Empire for their introduction and asking for peaceful communication, but the Empire didn't take it that way. They mistook the soft tone for fear. The alien leader replied with a booming message. "Do not tremble, young species. The Empire protects all who kneel before it." The humans just stared at each other for a second before another wave of laughter broke out. What made it funnier was the way the Empire spoke, as if humanity had been lost children finally found by a parent. They kept calling humans lesser minds and young walkers. The humans couldn't believe that a civilization claiming to control the galaxy still used communication software that lagged every few seconds. Their own ships could send live 3D visuals instantly, yet the Empire's image kept freezing mid-sentence, sometimes with their ambassador's face stuck in strange expressions. The more the humans listened, the more absurd it became. One of the scientists started analyzing the alien ship structure. The Empire's cruisers were covered in gold-colored panels, completely useless for protection but shiny enough to reflect starlight. Their ships looked majestic from a distance but were incredibly inefficient. It was like painting a sports car gold and calling it a tank. As the Empire continued its speech, the human sensors picked up more data. The alien fleet was massive, over 100 ships, but most of them carried weak weapon signatures. Their biggest battleship, proudly displayed at the front, had weapon energy barely stronger than an old Earth missile. The human crew realized that the Empire's real power was in words, not technology. They ruled through fear and reputation, not strength. Still, the commander didn't want to offend them too soon. She knew this was a first contact moment, something that would be remembered for centuries. She sent a message requesting a friendly exchange of information. The Empire's reply came quickly. "Information is not for the untested. You will serve the Empire's Science Council once your loyalty is proven." That was it. The room burst into uncontrollable laughter again. One pilot joked that maybe they should ask the Empire if they could wash their ships to prove loyalty. Another crew member played a light tune over the speakers, something cheerful from old Earth just to ease the mood. But the aliens didn't understand humor. To them, the sound was confusing, maybe even threatening. Soon after, the Empire's commander appeared on the screen. His voice was deep and theatrical, echoing as if he spoke inside a hall of mirrors. He declared that humanity would be assigned as a junior species under Imperial guidance. They would send teachers to Earth to correct human science. The humans couldn't hold it in anymore. The commander of the human fleet, who had been patient all this time, finally covered her face and sighed. A few seconds later, she started chuckling. The rest followed, and the entire room erupted in laughter once again. But to the Empire, this laughter meant something completely different. The aliens didn't know human emotions well. They thought the laughter was a strange ritual of acceptance. The Empire's commander smiled proudly and said, "Ah, you understand now. Laughter is the sound of submission in your species, yes?" That made the humans laugh even harder. However, the situation slowly began to change. The Empire wanted to make an example of the humans in front of its fleet. They ordered a small drone attack, a warning shot they called it. Hundreds of drones moved out from the Empire's ships, glowing in the darkness, heading straight for the humans. But the human sensors showed how weak they were. Their energy output was laughable. The commander calmly ordered her defense officer to raise shields. When the drones fired, their shots looked bright but harmless. The humans didn't even flinch. The energy blasts hit the shields like pebbles hitting glass, nothing but a faint shimmer. The room filled with quiet chuckles again. One officer even said, "Is that it?" The commander smiled and nodded. "Looks like it." The Empire's fleet didn't understand. They were confused why their weapons had no effect. Their sensors weren't advanced enough to measure the humans' real shield capacity. They thought the humans were using some kind of trick. The Empire's commander grew frustrated. His voice echoed across the comms. Do not test the might of the Empire. You have been warned. The human commander decided not to respond immediately. She let the silence hang for a moment. The crew sat quietly now, the laughter fading into an amused calm. They were not angry or scared, just amazed at how different these aliens were from what they had expected. The Empire thought it ruled the stars, but its strength was built on old myths. Finally, the commander leaned forward and said softly, "Send a message. Keep it polite." The communication officer nodded and typed it in. "We appreciate your concern for our safety. However, we prefer peace without conditions. Our species doesn't kneel." The message was short and clear. When it reached the Empire, their sensors picked up the human fleet's calm, steady energy readings. No signs of fear. No defensive retreat. Just quiet confidence. The Empire's commander didn't know how to react. To them, every species they had met before either begged for mercy or attacked wildly. But the humans were different. They laughed in the face of threats. Inside the human ship, the atmosphere grew lighter again. The crew shared small smiles. Someone joked that maybe they should send the aliens a comedy show instead of a peace treaty. Another said, if they ever visit Earth, they'll faint when they see our internet. The laughter returned. Softer now, but still full of that human warmth. The kind that rises when fear turns into curiosity. Far outside, the Empire's fleet hovered in silence, unsure what to do next. Their commanders had no idea how to deal with people who weren't afraid. The Empire had built its power on intimidation, but these humans had found something fun in the middle of danger. Back on the human bridge, the commander looked out at the stars and said quietly, "They don't know it yet, but they've just met the one species that doesn't play by old rules." Her crew nodded, still smiling. They didn't want war. They didn't want to conquer anyone. They just couldn't help laughing at the idea that anyone would call themselves rulers of the galaxy. As their ships drifted forward, the humans felt something deep inside. Pride, humor, and a strange kind of hope. If this was what the galaxy was like, maybe humanity had a bigger role to play than anyone realized. Not as soldiers or servants, but as explorers who could teach even ancient empires that laughter could be stronger than fear. And as their signal faded into the blackness of space, the echo of their laughter traveled with it, soft, human, and impossible to forget. The stars were quiet again. The human fleet floated between them, surrounded by the massive ships of the Galactic Empire. For hours no one spoke. The Empire's commanders were still trying to understand what had just happened. Their drones had fired hundreds of shots, and yet the humans had not even moved. Not a single ship showed damage. Their shields didn't flicker. Their crews didn't panic. They only laughed. To the Empire, it was impossible. To the humans, it was funny. Now silence filled the space between both fleets. Inside the human command ship, the crew was calm but alert. Everyone could feel that the next few minutes would decide what happened next. Would the Empire attack again, or would they finally realize that humanity wasn't something to toy with? The commander of the human fleet sat quietly, eyes fixed on the glowing dots on the screen. Each dot represented an enemy ship. 100 of them, maybe more. Their formation was perfect, lined up, proud and ready. But even from the data on the display, it was clear their power systems were running low. The humans had scanned every detail. The Empire's ships looked strong, but their cores were unstable and outdated. The Empire's voice finally returned through the speakers. It was louder this time, with a hint of anger. "Human fleet," the alien commander began, "you have violated the peace of the Empire. You have refused our generous offer of guidance. You will now face correction." The humans exchanged glances. A few sighed, some chuckled under their breath. The commander of the fleet didn't look angry. She looked almost sad. "They really don't understand," she whispered softly. The crew waited for her command. She stood up slowly and walked closer to the large viewing screen, where the stars shimmered beyond the glass. Her voice was calm when she spoke. "Send one warning shot," she said. "Low power. No casualties, just enough to wake them up." The officer at the weapons console hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "A single railgun round?" "Yes," the commander said. "Make it clean." The room fell silent. The ship's main weapon system came online with a low hum, its energy readings rising sharply. The other human ships adjusted formation, preparing for whatever would come next. The Empire's sensors must have detected the charge because their radio chatter suddenly exploded. The humans could hear fragments of confused alien voices over open frequencies. Questions, orders, panic. They had never seen power readings that high before. The human railgun fired. There was no explosion, no thunder, just a flash. A single line of light streaking through the black void. It crossed the distance between fleets in less than a second and hit the Empire's flagship dead center. The round wasn't meant to destroy. It was only a warning shot fired at 1% power, yet even that small fraction tore through the alien ship's outer hull like paper. A section of the command tower simply vanished into a glowing mist. Then everything stopped. For a few seconds, even the stars seemed to hold their breath. The Empire's entire fleet went silent. Their sensors, their communication lines, their weapons, everything froze. The human crew stared at the screen, quiet now. The laughter was gone. Only the soft hum of the ship remained. The commander took a deep breath. "Send them this message," she said. The communication officer nodded, waiting. The commander spoke clearly, her voice steady and respectful. "To the Galactic Empire, we did not come here to fight. We came to explore. But if you force us to defend ourselves, we will. Our weapons are not for conquest, but we do not bow. We ask only for peace, not obedience." The message was sent. It traveled across space, simple and direct. When it reached the Empire's fleet, there was no reply for several minutes. The humans waited patiently. They didn't raise their shields any higher, didn't aim any more weapons. They just waited. Inside the alien ships, confusion reigned. The Empire's commanders couldn't understand how their flagship had been hit so easily. Their technology was ancient, but they didn't know that. For centuries, no one had ever challenged them. Every species they met had surrendered instantly. None had dared laugh. None had fired back. The Empire's officers were taught that no weapon could pierce their armor. Yet now, a single human projectile had done more damage than any battle they had ever fought. Finally, a faint signal came through on the humans' screens. The alien commander's voice was quieter this time, stripped of the usual pride. "Human vessels," he said slowly, "we acknowledge your capabilities. There has been a misunderstanding." The humans listened silently. "You claim to seek peace," the alien continued, "and the Empire values peace above all, perhaps. We began on the wrong terms." The human commander smiled faintly. "Perhaps we did," she said softly, though the aliens couldn't hear her reply yet. The humans could see movement among the alien fleet. Ships were pulling back, their formations breaking apart. They weren't retreating in fear, more like confusion, even embarrassment. The Empire wasn't used to backing down. But they knew one thing now: these humans weren't weak. The human crew relaxed for the first time in hours. The tension melted away slowly, replaced by quiet satisfaction. Someone leaned back and whispered, "They finally get it." Another laughed softly. The sound wasn't mocking, it was relief. The commander turned toward her crew and said, "Let's not celebrate too early. They'll need time to process this." She looked out the window again, watching the Empire's ships drift away into the distance. "But I think they've learned something today." She wasn't just talking about power. It wasn't about showing off weapons or proving who was stronger. It was about respect, something the Empire had forgotten long ago. As the human ships powered down their weapons, the commander recorded one final log entry. Her words were simple. "First encounter with the Galactic Empire has ended without loss. Communication remains open. Hostilities appear to have ceased. Lesson learned. Sometimes laughter and restraint speak louder than fear." Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. She ended the recording and leaned back, finally allowing herself to smile. Outside, the stars shone brighter. The Empire's fleet was retreating, shrinking into the distance. The humans watched until the last glimmer disappeared into the black. Then, one by one, the lights inside the control room dimmed to their normal level. The long day was finally ending. But no one could forget what they had seen. The moment when arrogance met truth. The humans had not come to dominate or destroy, yet their quiet confidence had shaken an empire that claimed to rule the galaxy. All it took was one calm shot, one simple act of restraint to remind them that real power isn't loud. It doesn't need grand speeches or golden ships. Real power is control, the kind that comes from knowing exactly how strong you are and when not to use it. The commander walked slowly through the ship's corridors, passing crew members who were smiling softly, talking in low voices. They weren't celebrating victory. They were proud of something else, of showing humanity's strength without cruelty. In the observation deck, she paused to look at Earth's image on the navigation map, a tiny blue circle glowing far behind them. "They'll be proud," she whispered. "They'll know we did this right." In the distance, the Empire's last transmission played quietly. It was short. Human fleet communication suspended. "The Empire will review future contact. We request your withdrawal for now." The human commander agreed. "Understood," she replied simply. There was no anger, no sarcasm. Just understanding. The humans had made their point. They didn't need to prove anything more. As the human fleet turned and began the long journey home, the stars seemed to open before them. Vast, endless, full of new possibilities. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Empire was rethinking everything it believed about power and control, and aboard the human ship, quiet laughter returned, soft, natural, and full of life. It wasn't the kind of laughter that mocked others. It was the kind that came from relief, from knowing that even in a galaxy full of arrogance and fear, humanity still carried something different: courage, kindness, and the ability to laugh at the impossible. They had shown the universe something the Empire could never understand: that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't a gun or a ship. It was the spirit to stay calm, smile in the face of threats, and prove that sometimes laughter is the loudest answer of all. The stars stretched endlessly, quiet and peaceful, as the human ships made their slow journey home. The last echoes of the encounter with the Galactic Empire still lingered in the minds of everyone on board. For many hours, no one spoke about it. They were all lost in thought. It wasn't just a space mission anymore. It had become something far bigger, something that would be remembered forever in human history. When they first set out, the crew thought they were exploring new regions of the galaxy, searching for new life, new answers. But now they realized they had done something unexpected. They had taught a lesson to a civilization that believed itself untouchable. They had done it not through war or aggression, but with calm confidence and, strangely enough, laughter. Inside the control room, the commander stood by the wide window that showed the endless dark ahead. Her reflection blended with the stars. She could see her crew behind her, tired, proud, and peaceful. A soft hum from the ship filled the silence, a comforting sound that reminded everyone they were still safe, still human. One of the communication officers spoke quietly. "Command, incoming signal from the Empire." Everyone turned. The air suddenly felt heavier. The commander nodded for it to be played. The alien voice that filled the room sounded different now. Gone was the arrogance, the booming tone. It was calm, measured, almost respectful. "Human fleet," the voice said. "This is the Galactic Empire. We have reviewed the events of our encounter. We'd acknowledge our misunderstanding. The Empire has not seen technology or spirit like yours in centuries. You have our respect. For now, our fleets will withdraw. The stars are vast enough for both of us." The humans looked at each other. No one clapped, no one cheered. It was a quiet moment, one that felt almost sacred. The commander finally said, "Send reply acknowledged. We wish for peace and understanding." When the message was sent, she turned to her crew and smiled. "That's it," she said softly. "No war, no destruction, just peace." The rest of the crew began to relax. Some leaned back in their seats, others closed their eyes in relief. A few smiled quietly, remembering the laughter that had carried them through the tension. It was strange to think that humor, something so human, so simple, had done what weapons couldn't. It had broken fear. As the ships continued their journey, news of the encounter started spreading through human communication channels. The recordings of the Empire's grand speeches, the moments of human laughter, the single, precise shot. It all became a story people couldn't stop talking about. On Earth, people watched in amazement. Across colonies and stations, humans felt a new kind of pride. For the first time, they weren't just exploring space. They were shaping how the galaxy saw them. Meanwhile, deep within the Empire, confusion had turned into curiosity. The human message was played again and again in their council chambers. The phrase, "We prefer peace without conditions," became the most studied sentence in the Empire's history. For centuries, they had ruled through fear, believing that domination was strength. But now they had met a species that didn't fear them, and that had shaken their very foundation. Back on the human ship, the crew gathered in the observation deck. It was late, but no one wanted to sleep yet. The commander stood among them, hands folded behind her back, watching the stars. One of the young officers spoke. "Do you think they'll come back someday?" The commander smiled slightly. "Maybe," she said. But next time it'll be different. They won't come to rule us. They'll come to understand us. The officer nodded, still looking out at the stars. I wonder what they'll think about us, he said softly. They'll think we're strange, the commander replied, her tone light. A species that laughs when threatened. A species that answers pride with calmness. But maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Everyone fell silent again, lost in the beauty of space. The stars looked peaceful now, not cold or distant, but welcoming. Somewhere out there, the Empire was recovering from its shock. Maybe in time they would change. A few days later, as the fleet approached the edge of human space, a message came from Earth Command. It was simple and full of emotion. Welcome home, explorers. Humanity is proud. You've reminded the stars who we are. The crew smiled as the message played. Some had tears in their eyes. They had faced a galactic empire and returned without bloodshed. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its weapons, but in its heart. In the following months, reports spread across the human colonies. The Empire had stopped its patrols near human borders. Instead of threats, they began sending cautious greetings, even data exchanges. Small steps, but important ones. The laughter of that first encounter had changed something fundamental. It had planted a seed of humility in a proud empire. The human commander, now back on Earth, was invited to speak before the Council of Nations. The hall was filled with scientists, soldiers, and civilians. She stood quietly at the podium, looking at the crowd before her. I know many of you expected a battle, she began, her voice calm. You expected stories of war and victory, but we didn't win through power. We won through something far more human: patience, humor, and self-control. We laughed not because we were mocking them, but because we saw how absurd fear can be, and that laughter reminded us of who we are. It showed them something they'd forgotten, what real strength looks like. Her words were met with a long, emotional silence. Then the room filled with applause, not the loud, chaotic kind, but a steady, meaningful one. People stood up, not for victory, but for understanding. Later, in a quiet moment, she looked up at the night sky from the observation dome. The stars shimmered above, silent witnesses to all that had happened. She thought about the Empire, about the way their grand voices had trembled when they realized what humanity was capable of. She hoped they would learn from this. She hoped no more species would have to live in fear. Then she smiled to herself and whispered, "When you meet a human ship, don't make them laugh." Those words spread quickly, carried across human colonies, and even whispered among the Empire's ranks. It became a saying throughout the galaxy, a reminder of that day when humans showed the universe their true nature. Not conquerors, not victims, but explorers with hearts too big to be ruled. Years passed. Humanity grew stronger, but not in the way the Empire expected. They didn't build larger weapons or bigger fleets. Instead, they built better connections, with other species, with new worlds, with each other. They carried the memory of that first meeting as a symbol of balance between courage and kindness. And somewhere far away, deep within the Empire, new voices began to rise. Young leaders questioned the old ways. They spoke about cooperation, about learning from humans, about the power of laughter instead of fear. Slowly, change began to ripple through their once proud halls. Back on Earth, the commander grew older, but she never forgot that day in deep space. Sometimes she would sit by the window of her home and look at the night sky, remembering the silence that followed that one single railgun shot. She knew that moment had changed the galaxy forever. She didn't see herself as a hero. To her, it was simple. Humans had only acted like themselves, curious, brave, a little foolish maybe, but real. And as she watched the stars, a faint smile touched her face. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet might still be whispering the story of the laughing humans, the ones who met the Empire and didn't bow. The night was quiet, and the stars twinkled softly as if they were laughing too.